well as you acquire more power as a woman and you're somebody that's forthright and has an opinion, has to make decisions, right, that have consequences. Some men, not all men, some men really don't like that.
Welcome back to 40-Minute Mentor, the podcast on a mission to raise aspirations and inspire the next generation of category-defining founders, all in just 40 minutes. Today, we're joined by Mary Bekhait, Group CEO of YMU, a global talent agency representing some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry and beyond, including Fearne Cotton, Clare Balding, Davina McCall, Norton and Simon Cowell, to name a few. Mary has had a stellar career and has risen through the ranks at YMU since joining in 2012. She's held positions as Managing Director, CEO for UK, and now Group CEO. Since taking over the helm in January 2021, Mary has overseen a radical rebrand of YMU, transforming the agency into a progressive business spearheaded by women. I can't wait to dig into Mary's career, to hear all about it, find out what it's like to work with some of the biggest names in the entertainment world, and discuss leadership styles and DE&I in a male-dominated industry. Mary, it's a pleasure to have you here on the podcast. A massive thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I love the podcast, so thank you for having me.
Oh, that's so kind. Well, the pleasure is all mine. And we really want our listeners to get to know you, and I have no doubt be very inspired by you. So we're going to warm you up to begin with a few quick fire questions. So please finish the following sentences after me. Number 1, success means to me...
fulfillment of your potential. And as I get older, it also means the fulfillment of others' potential as well. And I think there's something incredibly exciting and gratifying about seeing you progress through life, but also taking other people on that journey as well. And so, yeah, increasingly it's about seeing others fulfill their potential as well as my own.
That's kind of intrinsically linked with mentorship as well, isn't it? So that's a perfect start. The best day in my career to date was when?
I think it was when I became Group CEO. It felt like the culmination of so many years' hard work. It really felt like a moment. And whilst it felt like it had been building up over many, many years, and it felt like I'd achieved a particular milestone, it also felt the start of a journey as well. It felt incredibly exciting, and I, could look forward to the next however many years to kind of climb that mountain and go on a journey. So I felt like that was really a significant moment for me personally. And I think it also was great for a woman to be given that position when so few women are offered a role like that in the talent agency landscape. So it was exciting and yeah, a milestone.
Yeah, what an amazing achievement. And I guess we'll come on to talk about being a woman in this industry, because that achievement itself, it stands for a lot, doesn't it? And I think it's a topic we can get deeper into as the conversation progresses. One piece of advice I'd like to give my younger self is...
take more risks. I think you can do that when you're young. You are in a position where the world is ahead of you. You have fewer responsibilities, fewer ties. I'm very much of the belief that, you regret the things that you didn't do, not the things you do. And so I would say to myself in my late teens and 20s, get out there and take way more risks than I did. I think it was potentially too conservative growing up. So yeah, I would advise all young people to take calculated risk, but to get out there and do it.
Yeah, so true. I'm sure lots of people listening to this will be like, yes, I should have done that as well. Because you can't get that time back in it. There is so much opportunity out there. And I think as you look back, you go, I could have made different choices, but you're never too old to take risks and go for it. But there's just more at stake often when you get older, isn't it? So you might as well, when you don't have a mortgage or family or that sort of stuff.
Actually, experiment.
Definitely.
Try new things. Absolutely.
Yeah, love that. My biggest failure to date is...
I don't really do sort of dwelling on failure. I'm sorry if that's not the answer you want, but I tend to think that failures are just a critical part of success. And actually, it's all part of the journey. I tend not to ruminate on things like that. I'm a very progressive, forward-thinking person. And I just see it as another stepping stone on the journey that I'm going to take. I think if you're not failing, you're probably not trying hard enough. So I really recognize it as part of a broader process. The times that I feel occasionally when I feel I've failed is when I haven't listened to myself or listened to my gut instinct, and I've allowed sort of others to get in my head or influence a decision that I instinctively in the beginning wasn't convinced by, then I sort of feel like I failed myself in those instances. But failure is genuinely, to my mind, a part of success. It's just one chapter of many.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully put and a really refreshing way to reframe failure as a learning and just a part of the journey, a really essential part of it. And I think for a lot of our listeners that are entrepreneurial people or founders of companies, you have to get used to failure very quickly and use it as your fuel rather than something that will slow you down or stop you.
Could agree more. You're never going to elude it, so it's part of the process. Embrace it, learn from it, move on.
Absolutely. Well, Mary, thank you for those quickfire questions. I think we've warmed you up really nicely, and I'm super excited to talk more about your career. But before we get on to that, I'd love to know a bit more about the younger Mary. What was she like? What was your upbringing like as well? And how has that influenced the sort of person and also the leader that you are today?
I grew up in central London, only child, which meant I often had a lot of time to myself. And I was a very imaginative child. So I spent a lot of time reading books, listening to music, watching TV. I felt really fortunate growing up in central London because I was able to sort of touch and feel those things. I could go to gigs, I could go to the theatre, we had amazing libraries, etc. So culture was on the doorstep and very accessible. And I think that really influenced where my tastes lay and who I became as a person. And I knew very early on that I wanted to work in creative industries. And living in central London gave me the opportunity to do a lot of work experience. So I was able to get my head around, okay, I like this, I like the creativity of it, but what does actually working in a creative business feel like? And I was able to do that pretty early on. So I think that definitely influenced what I wanted to do in terms of a career. In terms of how it's influenced my leadership style, I live in a world of ideas. Our entire business is fueled on ideas. And I'm very attracted to creative people, and I'm very determined to build an infrastructure where creative people, both colleagues and clients, can flourish.
Yeah, fantastic. Clearly that creative thread has been there from very early on. I love that.
Yeah.
And what was your first ever job? It sounds like you got early experience, like work experience, which clearly has sort of set you on this path. But what was the first job and how was that experience for you?
So I had two jobs that I was doing concurrently. My first job was as a Saturday girl in Urban Outfitters in Kensington High Street. It just opened, it just come over to the UK, and I just thought I was the bee's knees for getting this job on a Saturday, working in the dressing room, which taught me a lot of things about customer service and patience with the general British public. But in addition to that, I was also doing freelance editorial assistance at EMAP and IPC, which had magazines like Select, Melody Maker, NME, etc. So I was able to kind of manage those two things with my studies, and I learned a lot from both of them.
Yeah, I think there's so much to be said for getting out there and working. Like, I think it's something I think about with my daughter, who's also an only child. She's 8 going on 9, and I really want her to have what I had, which was just early work experience. And I think things like working in a shop, I did a lot of waiting when I was a kid, and actually that customer service experience, that patience, as you mentioned, and learning how to deal with people, it really has an impact. And I think it's good to get that, even if it's not the most glamorous sometimes and quite difficult. They're good experiences to have.
I think they're the right ones to have, those formative ones where you aren't doing anything glamorous and you are at sort of the bottom of the pecking order and you have got to go and make that endless cup of tea or whatever. It does teach you how to be part of a team and how to be of service and how to add value, even if what you're doing at that precise moment isn't exactly what you'd hoped it would be. I think coming in with the right energy and attitude into any organization, into any environment, and thinking, how do I make the best of this, not just for myself, but for the other people that have invited me in. And I think if you learn that early on, that will just pay such dividends as you progress.
Couldn't agree more. And I think work ethic in general, I think it's in the startup world, there's been, there was years of hustle culture and it got a bit toxic. And now it's almost like an anti hustle culture. But you don't want to forget that actually to get places in life, you do need to work hard and you need to have the resilience to push through and do the gritty stuff. And clearly you've done that in spades and progressed incredibly quickly in your career. And I guess that's where I'd love to go next, is just understanding what drew you to the talent management industry and how did you first break into it?
So I didn't know that I wanted to work in talent management specifically. I knew I wanted to work in creative industries. And originally I actually wanted to be a music journalist. But I actually fell into talent management because there was a tiny advert that said agent seeks assistant. I'd completed my master's degree at the London School of Economics. My dad was very keen for me to do an academic subject. And so I did that. But I was like, as soon as I got on that course, I was thinking, these are not my people. These people all want to work in banking and government, and that's fine. And good luck to them. And I met some really fantastic people, but I knew that wasn't what I wanted for myself. And I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do as a next step. At the time, I was doing a bit of freelance writing for the New Statesman and various other bits and bobs. And there was an advert that said agent seeks assistant on the University of London website. I had no idea what an agent did, genuinely, but I applied for the job and I got it. And I ended up staying there for 7 years. It was a small agency that looked after a lot of sort of non-fiction, unscripted talent, as we would call it. And it was a great experience for me. I learned so much during my time there. It was, by virtue of the fact it was small, I had to do all of the roles. So I was the literary agent, I was the brand agent, I was the live agent, I was in charge of the website and invoicing, etc. And it was a great experience because it taught me resilience and it really pushed me to develop my knowledge in lots of different areas of the industry, which I might not have done had I gone through a bigger agency and taken one specific path.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And I think sometimes when you think about careers, maybe at school you're told to focus on these big brands and corporate grad schemes and all that sort of stuff. And actually, well, I have found from working in a startup, my second job was in a 10-person business, and it forces you to get stuck into things you never would do otherwise. And I think there's a real benefit to that, and that's why I'm a big advocate for getting into entrepreneurial settings in smaller companies as well as big ones. I guess when you think back to those early formative years, sort of as you really learnt the trade, what were some of the biggest challenges you had to overcome, and how did you overcome them?
I think there's so many limitations put on women in this industry. And I think that you have to really adopt a mindset where you are going to challenge that as you move forward. And so for me, I always had a sense of fearlessness as I kind of progressed through my career. And I was determined to push myself outside of my comfort zone, go and attend events, go and meet new people, go and send that email, go and create that opportunity. I felt that I had that. And to cultivate courage in circumstances which I might otherwise have shrunk from. I recognized that courage was going to be a big part of my ability to create opportunity for myself. And I think there's that famous quote by Ananias Nin, which is, opportunity sort of grows in proportion to one's courage. I really believe that. I think you have to work incredibly hard. And I think I had to work really, really hard, having been part of such a small agency with such a big client base. So I think that was something that was good for me and pushed me forward. And I think having come through some of those experiences, I've never been complacent, ever, at any point in my career. I'm not complacent now, I never will be. So I think some of those challenges have enabled me to progress into the leader I am today, and I'm grateful for them.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing. And I guess you have been on this fast track career to senior leadership, progressed very quickly. So it'd be great to kind of hear a bit more about that progression journey and what your kind of secrets to success have been. What have been the things that have helped you get forward to each step in that kind of ladder?
I think one of the things that I have always done is deliver more than is expected. So I would go into an environment like YMU, as it was called James Grant when I started, and it's been rebranded to YMU. But I knew one of the things that I could do was control my energy and my attitude straight away. And I knew that I could work harder than everyone else if I came in. I might not be the best at everything, but I knew I could work harder than everyone else. And so I was really determined to do that and over-deliver on every project that was given to me. And I think one of the things that helped me stand out was that I was going to go the extra mile. And I think once you consistently do that with your employer, they recognize that. And that often opens up more opportunity for you. I think that I am a relatively forthright person, and I'm somebody that will stand in their power, and I have a voice, and I recognize that. And I think I've always been able to be vocal in a positive and a respectful way in work environments, contribute and put ideas forward, really take a step back and think, where are the gaps in the organization? How can I come up with ideas that positively aim to fill those gaps? And so I think I'm good at that over the years. And I think that, having relationships with people and building relationships with people is incredibly important. Business is fundamentally about people. And so trying to get more of an understanding of people's desires, motivations, has been a really critical part of my success, because the whole of the business, and particularly the business that I'm in, it's about people. And I think unless you understand people, unless you can be a brilliant colleague to people, then I think you won't succeed in the kinds of businesses that I've come up through.
I couldn't agree more. It's just so important, and building relationships for the long term, genuine connection, I think makes such a difference. From turning it from transactional to actually sort of meaningful, I think it's not difficult. It's not rocket science, but actually there are some people that are just really, really good at it, and then others that struggle. And I think those people that can be brilliant, can build relationships, genuine ones, go very far.
If you can come from a place of building relationships whereby you think, how can I be of service to this person? And not seeing that as, just putting your ego to the side for a second and thinking, how can I actually help this individual? I think you'll go far, because people will know that you're motivated for the right reasons and that you recognize that you are part of a team and you want the team to succeed. And that's a very YMU philosophy. We're very team oriented versus individually oriented.
Yeah, I love that. It's very similar philosophy to JBM, and I think despite us being quite a small business, we've been able to maybe get ahead and punch above our weight, because we tend to play the longer game and actually focus on how we can help first, rather than it trying to be, try to make a quick buck here or there and make a placement. This is actually about investing in people, and then often it's the people you don't get jobs that are the ones that become clients, because they remember that you've been there and you've helped and you've put them first. And I think it does make a real difference. You're now a very experienced leader, who's had huge amounts of success. So how would you describe your leadership style today, and how has that evolved over the years as you've progressed?
I think I'm a more patient and empathetic leader the older I get. I was always in a terrible hurry coming through, and I still believe speed is incredibly important. I do believe that's important in business. However, I think I've been able to cultivate more patience, more empathy. I'm more calm as well, because I think as you go through your leadership journey, you recognize that there are lots of things that you can't control in the broader environment, and those waves are always going to be there. They're always going to keep coming. So actually, how do you manage yourself? And in so doing, manage the rest of the organization through some of those challenges? How do you build resilience? So for me, I think those are 3 or 4 things that have really developed as I've come through. I think I'm much better at delegating now. I will always have an opinion. That's who I am, and that's an important part of leadership as well. But I think I'm better at taking a step back and letting the managing directors interpret the overall vision as they see fit for their division. And so I think I'm better at that as well now.
Yeah. And did those changes in leadership style, the ability to sort of delegate more, the patience, did that come just over time, or did it come from maybe difficult feedback you received? Because for me, it's one of those things that I'm very similar. I'm go, 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 not the most patient. My wife will agree if she could hear me. And delegation is so hard when it's your baby and you're, in the hot seat. But actually, it's very powerful when you get to that point that you go, actually, no, I've hired people for a reason. I need to trust them and empower them to go and deliver great work. And actually, that has an exponential impact. But it is a difficult thing to actually let go of. So I just wonder if there was a particular moment that helped you with that.
I think it was necessarily a specific moment, but I think it's something that's happened organically. And also, I think as you have more conversations with your team and you invite more feedback from your team, you get kind of, look, I can handle this, or actually I need you involved in this. And I think listening is a really important part of leadership as well. Letting your team believe and feel confident that they can give you the feedback on your style as well as their own style as well. So I think I've been able to foster an environment where people feel comfortable enough to do that to a degree, I would say. But also I think that's part of the leadership journey, that you letting go is such an important part of actually moving forward. Because if you're trying to do everything, then you can't, right? You've got to believe the people you've hired are right. And if they're right, let them get on with it.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like you've created a really psychologically safe environment as well, where people are allowed to speak up and have thoughts and opinions. And through letting that happen and listening, that's helped you become a better leader. And so it's just a good reminder to us all and anyone listening about the importance of giving space for talent to speak up and also have the space to make mistakes and the chance to make mistakes, because that's how we all learn, right? I think it's often when you find I sometimes see, very micromanagey people. And I just think they're getting in their own way, and they're certainly not helping their team to fulfill their potential. That's really, really interesting. I guess when we think about leadership, what to you makes a great leader? And who has been your inspiration when it comes to leadership over the years?
I think leaders that recognize that it's about the team and leaders that put the team first are great leaders for me. So I very much subscribe to the axiom that, leaders eat last. I think that's absolutely the philosophy that a great leader should have. I think a clarity of vision is important, and an ability to communicate that vision is incredibly important in a leader. I think resilience is critical, because I think we're living in such a fast-paced world, and our industry is changing at an incredible rate, that one has to build resilience in the face of that and actually change challenges into opportunities, to have a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. And for me, those are some of the ingredients that really great leaders have and come under pressure, right? So that's a combination of things that I really look up to when I see other leaders.
Just a quick one from me before we hear more pocket-sized mentorship from today's 40-minute mentor. This episode is brought to you by Foundation Partners, the embedded people function service that scales from inception to growth. Foundation Partners have been the go-to partner for over 200 leaders globally who want to create high-performing teams and companies through aligning your people strategy with your business strategy. Alongside JBM and Unleashed, Foundation Partners is also part of Amplified Group, the people services supergroup that supports tech companies from inception all the way to IPO. To find out more about Foundation Partners, head over to www.foundationpartners.co.uk or get in touch with people at foundationpartners.co.uk. Now, back to today's 40-minute mentor. We probably should talk a bit more about the talent management industry. It's a fantastic one to be in, a really dynamic and interesting and creative space. There are going to be people listening to this that I'd love to work in an industry like that. But I would imagine it's not always the easiest one to break into. So what advice do you have for them, particularly when it comes to standing out from the crowd and really getting in and ahead in the industry?
I think you need to find a way to get your foot through the door, right? This is an incredibly competitive industry. Lots of people want to work in it. I think you start with work experience, and I think the whole process starts from when you send your first email. So I often get approached by lots of people who say, I want a job, rather than an approach which I think is more effective, where they say, I think your company is great. I think there's an opportunity for me to add X. Insert what you think you can actually add value-wise. This is how I think I can do it. Can we have a conversation? So I think you need to be really, really thoughtful about how you're approaching organizations in the first instance. I think once you've got your foot through the door, you need to come in with a really positive mindset. You need to come in with huge amounts of energy. You need to be happy to start at the bottom, and you need to be able to make thoughtful and compelling observations that make you stand out from peers that come in, tick it off a list of stuff that they're going to do that summer and move on. And I think one of the ways that you do that is to be informed about the company that you're joining, about the clients that they represent, about what's going on in the broader industry. And usually people that are coming in doing work experience are younger. And younger people are incredibly valuable because they can tell us what's going on, right? With social, what's going on a variety of different planes. So come in and have an opinion and deliver that in a respectful way, and you will stand out.
Absolutely brilliant advice. And actually, it's something that's, although I'm not in the talent management industry, I guess I am in the talent industry in a slightly different space as a headhunter. And one thing that is incredibly galling is when we put exceptional talent in terms of our clients, and they don't come prepared. For me, it blows my mind that even senior leaders kind of don't go above and beyond. And in this market, in this economy, you have to do the work and you have to go above and beyond. You've got to really make the effort. And I think it goes exactly the same for when you're breaking into an industry. You can really set yourself apart by being thoughtful and being considered and going the extra mile, and exactly as you've said. So it's just a reminder to us all, if anyone's listening to this that's going through interview processes, it really makes our clients sort of listen when they've gone and actually ordered a product, and they've then can feedback on the customer service or experience, or they've investigated the competition in a slightly different way. I just think differently, think outside the box, and that I'm sure would impress you, and it certainly impresses me. We touched upon how male dominated this industry is, and you've kind of broken the mold, and I know you're doing a lot internally to sort of change that, but how has that experience been for you as a woman rising through the ranks in the talent management industry? What's that been like, and what have been your kind of observations from that experience?
I think it's interesting because as I was sort of coming through the ranks, men always held position of powers. That was all you saw, really. And it was so unusual to see a woman in a position of power that you start to question whether that's even possible, right? So I think things are changing really rapidly, but I certainly remember that coming through. I also think as well as you start to interact with companies in different sectors, so the banking sector or venture capital, it is so male dominated. It's extraordinary that you end up often being the only woman in the room. That's an unusual experience. Being the only anything in the room is an unusual experience. And there's power and there's challenges that come with that. You start to feel very othered as a result of that and recognize that your experience is different. I would also say, as well, as you acquire more power as a woman and you're somebody that's forthright and has an opinion, has to make decisions, right, that have consequences. Some men, not all men, some men really don't like that. They really don't like that. And they can express that in ways that make them more aggressive, potentially borderline threatening, etc., which is really interesting because you start to look at that dynamic and you say, okay, this is you really struggling with a woman being in that position. Because what I'm saying is no different to what my male predecessor might have said, or another man, a man in the same position might have said, because it's coming from a woman, that's landed quite differently with certain men. And so I think there have definitely been challenges, and I've dealt with some very aggressive, difficult individuals as a result, I think, of my gender more than anything else.
Yeah, it's such a shame to hear that, but sadly that is the case for so many women and underrepresented people as well that are sort of trying to get ahead. So I really hope that will not be the case in years to come.
No, and I've also worked with some incredible men.
Of course, yeah, of course.
It's a minority of men. So I've worked with some phenomenal men who still work with me today at YMU, and I'm very lucky to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess people listening to this that are trying to break down that glass ceiling in other male-dominated industries, you mentioned VC, banking, there are others that are changing, but maybe not quick enough. So what advice do you have for them that are looking to you for sort of inspiration?
I would say stand in your power. You have earned the right to be in that organization by virtue of the fact that you are there. You will have gone through an interview process. You've been selected for a reason. So I would remind yourself of that. I would remind yourself that being different is valuable and makes you harder to replace. So actually embrace that difference and recognize that as a result of that difference, you're bringing something different to the party, something different to the table, and be confident in that. I would encourage anyone in those environments to cultivate courage and to think about how they can push themselves outside of their comfort zone. Because if you're going to progress in life, you're going to have to put your head above the parapet at some point. And if you do that, particularly as a woman, because people are harder on women, you will be judged, you will be criticized, but you need to persist. And in order to do that, you need to cultivate courage, in my opinion. So I think that's incredibly important. I think if you're particularly in a male-dominated environment and you want to find a way forward, I would find female mentors that have gone there before you, that you can reach out to and say, look, can I have a coffee? Can I talk to you about this? How did you do it? What were your experiences? 9 times out of 10, most people will give you time if you ask for it. And my last piece of advice is don't give up. Be resilient, right? Not everything is going to go in your favor, particularly if you're trying to break a mold or you're trying to find a path that doesn't necessarily open itself up to you easily. Don't give up.
Yeah, great advice. And I know you've done a lot of great work at YMU to build a much more diverse team, get more women into leadership positions, which obviously helps the wider industry see that and hopefully make change too. So do you mind sharing a bit about your approach to this, particularly hiring, and any advice you might have for other leaders listening to this that know they need to do work on this and maybe need a bit of helping hand to sort of change the way that they hire?
Yeah, I think at YMU, we've been pretty progressive in respect of how we've made changes when it comes to diversity. I think, as I said at the outset, we're pretty unusual for a scale talent management agency to have so much female leadership. We have a female CEO, myself, a female CFO, a female chair. in Linda Yaccarino, who's the CEO of X. We have multiple female managing directors, and we've been very conscious of that. Yes, there's a moral imperative to do that, but there's also an economic imperative to do that. More than 50% of our client base is female. More than 50% of audiences are female. More than 50% of share of wallet in the home is female owned and driven. So we need to have female perspectives and voices, not only on screen, but at board level, that reflect what's going on in the world. So we were very conscious and mindful of our hiring as a result of that. And once you have women in place, you want to try and enable them to thrive. We really want YMU to be a place where women can thrive. And so we've looked at everything from more generous maternity leave policies to shared paternity leave policies so that women don't feel like the responsibility and the onus is just on them for child rearing. We've looked at things like nursery share policies to help with the cost of nursery. So we've done a variety of things that hopefully mean that women have an opportunity to navigate some of the more challenging moments in their career, which in my experience is when women have a baby and when they're child rearing. Other examples would be in London specifically, we've raised the entry salary to 30,000 to encourage more social mobility, because often you find if you're giving out a sort of junior salary of 17, 18,000, which is not unusual in the media sector, that often goes to people whose family can support them. And if you're from an environment or a background where you can't afford to do that, your family can't afford to support you, then you are automatically excluded from the opportunity. So we've been really mindful of things like that. We have a LGBTQ plus committee as well internally. So we're really mindful of the diversity issue. I think we've made real strides, but there's so much more we can do. And when hiring, I honestly think hiring is the foundation of every company. If you hire well, you take care of 90% of your issues. If you hire poorly, you feel that. And I would advise anyone that's going through the hiring process to really push themselves and confront their unconscious bias. I would encourage them to change the framework of the hiring process such that a more diverse pool of candidates come through, because at YMU, diversity is more than just ticking a box to say, oh, aren't we good? We've morally done the right thing here. It's about actually what's going to lead to the best decisions for our clients and enable us to make the best decisions for our clients. And that's having as many diverse viewpoints that help us connect the dots and prevent linear thinking and groupthink. And for me, there is a direct correlation between the cognitive diversity of the team and the quality of decisions that come out of any of our processes at YMU. So it is very much front of mind. And I think we've made good strides, but there's always more that you can be doing.
I think it sounds like you're doing an incredible job, and I love how deliberate and thoughtful and considered you've been in terms of the culture you're building and the way you hire and the benefits you offer. I think it's really inspiring, and hopefully a lot of others listening that may not have thought about some of those things can kind of implement them, because I think it makes for a better environment. I think you can attract a broader range of talent as well, and that's just good for everyone. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have been sort of patiently waiting to hear about some of these legends of the entertainment industry that you get to work with. I'd love to ask you, what is it like to work with such famous people that we all kind of love and admire from the TV or the radio or whatever it might be? And the flip side of that is, what is most challenging about managing those types of people?
I think the good things are that you're working with individuals that are wildly charismatic, usually, incredibly imaginative, creative, funny, clever, interesting people and human beings. And I think that provides for a lot of variety in your day and your working life. And it's very inspirational, actually. Being up close to people that have achieved extraordinary things is always amazing. The flip side of that is that they can be frustrating, they can be challenging, they can be not necessarily comply with deadlines or anything like that. So there are good points and bad points, but the good points are overwhelmingly just amazing. And every day I pinch myself that I get to do this job. It's incredible.
I can imagine. I'd also imagine there are lots of misconceptions about this industry. It is very glamorous from the outside, but I'm sure that's not always the case. So what are maybe the surprising bits that our audience might not know about, or the big misconceptions that people have about this world?
I think everyone thinks that it's kind of like some sort of ab fab and we're all drinking champagne at lunch and it's all,
Bolly at lunchtime, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And look, sometimes there is that, don't get me wrong. There are moments of glamour and that's wonderful, but there are also, it's hard work. It really is hard work behind the scenes. You've often with musicians, as an example, the team might go on tour for them for many months, right? And that completely takes over their personal life. Thinking about, people that've got families, the challenges that come with that, right? We're an international business. We have offices in London, Washington, New York. So time zones, you might be jumping on a call at 9, 10 p.m. because your client's in LA or vice versa. So, your times of your day can be really thrown off, and that can be hard going. Given that you're working with absolutely elite clients, you need to be on your game, which means your knowledge needs to be first rate. You need to have done your preparation. You need to have really thought through the messaging that you're going to give that client and make sure that you're preparing it in the best way possible. So yes, there are moments of glamour, of course there are, but there's a lot of slog that goes on behind the scenes as well that people probably don't understand or appreciate looking from the outside in.
I'm not going to be mean and get you to say who your favorite client has been or the best person, but I'd imagine there have been moments where you've been starstruck or where there's been someone that you've been really inspired by. So I'd love to hear if there's anyone that you're happy to share on that front, but also just ask do you get used to that? When there are people that you will see on stage and screen and that you kind of love from a distance, does that just become normal? It's just like any other working job, but it's just for someone like myself, I had to imagine it's quite a strange thing to get used to.
Yeah, I mean, look, we are managing lots of people that I grew up with in my childhood thinking, oh my God, this person is an icon, whether that's someone like a Paris Hilton, who I watched 20 years ago doing, The Simple Life. And today she actually releases her new album, which we've produced with her team as well. You look at moments like that and you think, my God, had I known 20 years ago that we'd be working together, that's incredible. Or a Simon Cowell, obviously I grew up watching all of the Got Talent, X Factor, etc. And to be working with him now is incredibly inspiring. Anton Deck, I watched SMTV growing up, etc. So it is extraordinary kind of meeting and working with some of the people that you've idolized as you've grown up. I wouldn't say I get starstruck so much anymore because you recognize quickly that they are normal people who are just absolutely brilliant at the job that they do. But I still don't feel complacent. I still get excited. I still get a buzz from it all. But I wouldn't say I'm starstruck so much these days.
Oh, that's awesome. And just thinking about it, when you have these sorts of brilliant individuals, but often comes with that big egos. So how do you manage that side of things? Because and I get this in my world, visionary founders of tech companies are often incredible, but have big egos because they kind of have to in some ways to get to where they are. So how do you manage that?
I think, we have a rule at YMU, which is that we wouldn't take on a client that we wouldn't have lunch with. And I think it's a really good rule. So yes, everyone has an ego, but actually these people are often so emotionally intelligent and wise that they recognize that actually for their brand to succeed in the long term, they need to take a team of people with them. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, our clients are brilliant to work with. Of course, every day is not smooth sailing, but I think they are all incredibly wise and intelligent to recognize that you get the best out of people when you deal with them well. That doesn't mean that you're not challenging them. That doesn't mean that you're not forthright with them, but that you have respect and that you are inspiring them to do their best. And actually the people that we work with take that route rather than any other. And it just makes you want to deliver for them even more.
Yeah, totally. And I guess that's what great partnerships are like, whether that's an agent and an actor or a headhunter and a candidate. It should be a partnership, and actually you both have each other's best interests at heart, and you actually need to listen to each other and support each other, and sometimes be that critical friend that cracks the whip and ask the hard questions. And I think that's really important. It's a really interesting insight. We have to look also to the future, because it feels like YMU's gone through this incredible sort of transformation under your leadership, and I'm sure there are very exciting things in the future. So what is your vision for the future of YMU, but also the broader industry?
I think the industry is changing so quickly in a really exciting way. And I think those changes really democratize access to content, the types of talent that are now coming to the fore, and how talent can connect with audiences. Distribution channels have changed hugely over the last few years. I think audience behaviors have changed, consumer spending has changed, the way brands have entered the fray has changed. And for me, I think that is incredibly exciting and dynamic. And from a YMU perspective, it enables us to do even more for our clients. And so we aspire to be, I believe we are and will continue to be, the foremost management company for elite clients in sport, music, and entertainment. And that mission will continue over the next few years. We've got a lot of exciting plans in place. And we are continue to build the very best team internally in order to execute those plans. It's an incredibly exciting time for the group.
Sounds amazing. Wishing you all the very best for that. And I guess for you personally in the next 12 months, what have you got on the horizon that, we can maybe tease our audience with? Is there anything really exciting in store?
I'm going to do more sort of personal development. I did a course at Harvard a couple of months ago on the business of sport, music and entertainment, which I enjoyed enormously and learnt so much from, met some incredible individuals. And so I have a couple more thoughts around potential sort of personal development opportunities like that. I definitely want to develop our US business further. So I'm going to be spending more time in the States, I would say, in the next 12 months in order for us to achieve that across all of our key sectors. So yeah, I think there's a few things kind of up my sleeve over the next 12 months that will certainly push and develop me and in turn, crucially move YMU Group forward.
Lots to look forward to. That's great to hear. Well, we're sadly at an end, Mary. We've got two final wrap-up questions for you. The first is, this is 40-Minute Mentor, so I have to ask you, if you could be mentored by anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I would be mentored by Robert Greene, who's alive and the author of a number of books. So the 48 Laws of Power, Mastery and various others. And I know Robert's quite a controversial character, but I think he's incredible, actually. I think he's been able to take the learnings of so many brilliant philosophers through the ages and package them up in a really compelling way for the modern world. I think his insight into human behavior, motivation, desires is fascinating. And as I said earlier in this podcast, I think business is about people. And I think understanding people is critical to business success. So being mentored by him would just be fascinating. And I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but I think that would make for stimulating conversation and relationship. So I think he'd be somebody that I would love to be mentored by, if he's listening.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you're listening, reach out to Mary today. It sounds like a brilliant potential partnership. Fantastic. And final question, is there one last piece of advice, career or life advice, that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think it's sort of two-part for me. It's just to remember that it starts and ends with you, your attitude, your energy, what you want to get up every single day and bring to the party. Because there are going to be so many times in your life where you are unable to influence or change the external circumstances. So I would always say start with yourself, because you have got control over yourself and how you approach things and your outlook. And I think that will determine so much of your individual success. And I would say that at the same time as doing that, remember that you can go fast alone, but you can go further together. And actually, that in most organizations, you really need to be part of a team and you need to be a person that comes with a philosophy that I actually want to serve and help this team move forward. That's our philosophy at YMU. We are a team and it is about the team over the individual. And I know that most organizations will have similar philosophy. And I would really encourage you to sort of think of those two things in tandem. How do I improve myself? How do I bring my best version of myself every single day, regardless of the environmental circumstances? And then recognize that as an individual, you are part of something bigger than yourself. And how do you make that better every day?
That's a really inspiring place to end this really inspiring conversation, Mary. So thank you so much for joining us on 40-Minute Mentor. I really enjoyed that. So much to take away, and I'm sure our audience will feel the same. So thank you very much, and all the very best for all you have in store for both YMU and yourself in the year ahead.
Thank you, James.
Thanks so much.
If you're seeking more stories from inspiring entrepreneurs, then don't miss The Serial Entrepreneur by Startups Magazine, a print and digital publication dedicated to supporting tech startups. In this podcast, editor Anna Wood interviews some of the most innovative startups today, sharing valuable lessons, stories of failure, and a dash of motivational advice. I can't recommend this podcast highly enough. So make sure you tune in now by searching The Serial Entrepreneur, cereal spelt like the breakfast, on any streaming platform, or by visiting startupsmagazine.co.uk. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I really hope that you found it useful and inspiring.
If we have left any questions unanswered, or if you have any feedback or guest recommendations for future series, then please make sure you get in touch on info@jbmc.co.uk. I often get asked by listeners how you can help us spread the word about 40 Minute Mentor. There are two simple ways you can help. Firstly, share this episode on your preferred social media platform, and LinkedIn is probably where I'm most likely to see it. And you can also leave us a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Every share on social media and review left on the podcast platforms really helps us to get 40 Minute Mentor in front of new audiences and share the power of mentorship even further. Thank you so much for your ongoing support, and I look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday for even more pocket-sized mentorship.